Today is the 17th of December 2008. We are at the Isaac C. Griswold Library in Whitehall, New York. The interviewer is Wayne Clark, and we are interviewing today Benjamin Raino. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and your date and place of birth?
Benjamin Raino, Benjamin N. Raino.
What's your middle name?
Benjamin Newell.
Okay.
Raino. Born 2234, Whitehall, New York.
Okay. Did you attend school in Whitehall?
Yes.
Okay. And what was life like growing up here in Whitehall as a kid? Is it?
Well, when I grew up, it was during the Second World War.
Uh-huh.
And there was rationing. I remember we used to get butter with there'd be a little capsule in the thing, and you would have to break the capsule to make it turn yellow.
Okay.
Artificial butter.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was stamps when I was young, and my mother used to make a lot of baked beans, and she made bread, and everybody had a garden,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of people had other gardens. Like today, you have your big stores. You didn't have them then,
Mm-hmm.
but you had a lot of good stores.
Did you participate in any like scrap metal drives?
Yes. My father had German helmets from the First World War, American helmet from the First World War, and he had other things. And in the park in Whitehall, everybody brought the stuff to the park. There was a big pile of everything, scrap, but a lot of stuff from the First World War
Uh-huh.
that guys had brought home with them. And we used to sell scrap. Then you could get a lot of money for your scrap.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Swinton worked on a railroad. They had a cleaning track, and the people would get onto the cleaning track. They'd clean out the shops, copper, brass, iron, and they could make some money that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what was it like at school? Were there any like air raid drills or anything like that?
I don't remember air raid drills, but I remember blackout drills
Blackout drills?
in the village, I believe.
Okay, so every home had the blackout curtains that you can recall?
Well, they didn't have the blackout curtains per se, but I mean, you just put the lights out, I think. Or maybe I'm dreaming. I don't know.
Oh, okay. And what about shoes? Did you have any problem getting shoes at all?
That's what I can remember.
Okay. And all right. Once the war was over, you were still in high school at that point?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And what year did you graduate from high school?
52. 1952.
52. Okay. But you mentioned in 1948 you went into the National Guard.
That's right. And I got out in 2 years later,
Okay.
1950.
All right. Why did you want to join the National Guard? Did you have friends in the Guard?
Yes, a lot of the football team was in the National Guard, and it was just, you had a couple bucks.
Uh-huh.
We went to camp up in, where was it? Yeah.
Fort Drum or Camp
Fort
Drum?
Camp Drum.
Okay. What did you do up at Camp Drum?
Oh, I drove a tank a little ways, about 10 yards, and I didn't know how to drive a car, and I'm going right off the road, so the guy, get out of that seat. And we fired a 76 millimeter cannon a couple of times.
Uh-huh.
And you had 30 caliber, I believe 30 caliber machine guns. That you had to traverse the turret by hand.
Uh-huh.
You turn the thing and turn. And that was a lot of fun for a young fellow.
Okay. Now, what kind of unit was here at Whitehall?
It was a tank unit.
It was a tank unit.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you stayed in the unit till you were 16?
Yep.
And then you were discharged?
Yes.
Okay. And then you ended up going into the Air Force.
Yes.
Okay. What year did you go into the Air Force?
1952.
Okay.
I think it was in August.
August of 52. Okay. And did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted. I don't think there was a draft then.
Okay. All right. And why did you pick the Air Force?
Well, I wanted to be an aerial gunner or an aerial photographer or something like that.
Uh-huh.
But I
Okay.
didn't get that.
Okay. And where did you go for your basic training?
Sampson Air Force Base. It was a naval base, but during the Korean War, it was an Air Force base.
Okay. And what was your training like?
Oh, there was a lot of marching and not really a lot of training because they didn't have any airplanes or anything.
Okay.
But our squad, or our platoon, took first place at drill comp.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that very well because I was picked to be guidon bearer,
Mm-hmm.
the guy with the flag and
Yep.
spear on it. And we took first place, so we said guidon bearer, flight 2014, front and center. And he was standing there, this colonel or general, whatever he was. And he says, "Okay, present arms." And whoop! It stopped about that far from his chest, and he turned right. And I thought he was going to put a rosette on, but instead of a rosette, he put on a cord, a silk cord, blue and white, and it came down. But it was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh. Now, being that you had been in the National Guard, did that help you?
I was picked to be. I had a blue sleevelet with 2 chevrons on it.
Okay.
I was in charge of because I was in the Guard. Wherever I went after that, I was in charge of something.
Okay. All right. And once you completed your basic training, where did you go next?
New York State University.
Whereabouts?
New York State University.
Okay. Whereabouts?
Brooklyn, New York.
Okay. And what did you study there?
Dental laboratory technology. There was a 2-year course that we took in 1 year,
Uh-huh.
and I was in charge of the rooms in the barracks. I think not barracks. We lived in a Hotel St. George,
Uh-huh.
which was on Clark Street Station, the subway.
Okay.
And, yeah, I was in charge of our room. I don't know, there were, I think there were probably 7 or 8 people in this one room, airmen. I think there were 4 or 5 black and 3 or 4 white, something like that.
Okay. And you received the dental training?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Fabrication of artificial appliances for the oral cavity, false teeth.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, now, did you pick that, or did the Air Force pick that
Well,
for
the
you?
Air Force picked that. They come around, they question you. They have your high school record, what you were good at in high school, and they ask you what you would like to be. And I said I would like to be an aerial gunner, aerial photographer, or I forgot what the other one was. Oh, military police, I think, something like that.
Okay.
So they came back 2 weeks later and said, well, you're going to dental laboratory school, you're going to college.
Uh-huh.
So you couldn't do anything about it. That's what we went.
Okay. And was that a tough course?
Extremely tough course. The instructors were out of colleges. I remember one was out of Boston College. We took, we had to take, you had to learn how to chemicals and stuff.
Uh-huh. Chemistry you took?
Chemistry, yeah. And in high school I had no chemistry. I had art. I had a 98 average in art in high school. That's probably why I was picked, where you could work with your hand.
Yeah.
And that was I got through the course all right, but there was some stuff that I didn't quite get. The atomic energy of this or something like that, that was,
Yeah.
beyond me.
Okay, once you graduated from that school, where were you sent?
I was sent to Stead Air Force Base in Nevada,
Okay. And whereabouts is Stead?
8 miles from Reno.
Okay. And what was Reno, Nevada like back then?
Fantastic.
Okay. And what was your job at Stead? Did you work in the dental field?
Well, yes. When I first got there, it was an old dental thing,
Uh-huh.
and they had no laboratory facilities at all. But they were in the process of building a new dental facility, which didn't have a dental laboratory, but the space was there. So I was asked to lay out a dental laboratory the way I thought it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I made one mistake. I had everything stainless steel. Well, that was great until you had to clean it. That takes a lot of scrubbing to get stainless steel clean.
Mm-hmm.
But it worked out real nice.
Okay. Now, did you work by yourself or with a dentist or a dental
You
crew?
work with the dentist. They have to take the impressions to make the teeth.
Uh-huh.
And I did gold work, and I made partials and full dentures. And we had a Colonel Hedyard. And he showed us pictures. He'd been in the service so long, his pictures, he had leggings on when he was in the service. And it was I had a lot of fun when I was in the service. I've had fun all my life, really.
Uh-huh. So you were involved in the metallurgy then, where you were melting the gold to make the teeth?
Yes. Well, you cast it. It's what they call the broken arm casting method. It's you wind up the machine and it goes around, and it's quite a simple. They don't use it today, but it was a simple method.
Uh-huh.
And we made the dentures. You had to set up the teeth on an articulator, and then the dentist would try them in the mouth, and then it would come back to you, and you would go through the process of putting the acrylic where the wax was.
Uh-huh.
It's not a complicated process, but you have to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what rank were you at that point?
At that point, I think I was a corporal.
Okay.
And I made bauxite while I was in Reno. I was
Okay.
in Reno for 2 years.
All right. And did you have any additional duties? Did you have to pull guard duty or KP or anything like that?
Well, that's the medical part of the Air Force, or any part of the service. I don't think they pulled. They didn't do
Okay.
anything. They just took care of their job.
Okay. And you mentioned like on your time off, you went into Reno?
Frequently.
Okay. All right. And so you really enjoyed Reno?
Yes, it took me a year to learn that I couldn't win.
Uh-huh.
I gambled for a year, underage.
Oh.
When I got to be old enough to gamble, I said, there's no sense in this because you gamble. We used to go to town, 2 or 3 of us, and you had to save 1 quarter.
Uh-huh.
Because on the way out of town, there was a little Mexican joint where you could get a cup of coffee and a bowl of chili for 25 cents.
Wow.
And no, that's a lot of fun. The Mapes Hotel and some of the bigger hotels. Lily St. Sarah was a stripper, and she come out over the dining hall on like a trolley.
Uh-huh.
And I was sitting there with a friend of mine. We're eating dinner. We're watching her. He suddenly gets a bloody nose all over the table. Has blood pressure, most of it. But I had a lot of fun.
Okay. And
I met some very nice people, by the way. The dentists were really, really good dentists.
okay.
Very professional people.
All right. And the company you were in, were there a lot of other enlisted personnel, or was it a very small unit?
Well, we didn't flights. We're in the Air Force. You have flights.
Or flights? Okay.
Okay. And, there was a small unit in Reno, Nevada. Reno, Nevada, or State Air Force Base, actually was over a dry lake. It built a bluff lake. There was a dry lake down here, and the planes would come in this way.
Uh-huh.
And looking out the window one night, this plane, the wind's blowing awful hard, and the plane's coming in sideways. And he got right to the runway, and that was in Alaska. Excuse me. State Air Force Base, they would fly from California, and they would use the base for touch and go.
Uh-huh.
Like landing on an aircraft carrier, they just come down, touch and go, touch and go. But it was, I had a friend there in the medics, ambulance driver. Oh, that's Alaska too. That's a different story.
Oh, okay. All right. Once you left Stead, you were sent to Alaska?
Yes, and there's a story behind that.
Okay.
I put in for I wanted to go someplace else. I'd been in Alaska or in Reno for 2 years, and I was, so I said to the colonel, I'd like to get out of here. I'd like to go someplace else. Well, he said, where would you like to go? I said, well, I'd like to go to Spain, Argentina, or someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said, you can't go to any of those places. I said, well, why not, Colonel? I said, they're a 2-year tour, and you only have 11 months left. Well, Well, I said, okay. Just before that, a while, they put a drive-in on all the old gold. When you made a new denture for someone, a partial,
Yeah.
a lot of them had gold partials, where you would take the gold partial and you would make them a chromium steel partial, titanium or vitalium, which were made in Alameda, California, and they would send it to us and we would put the plastic teeth on them. So the colonel asked me to cut all that old things up, you know, and put them in a jar. So I said, Colonel, I said, remember that gold that you made me cut up? He said, yes. So anyway, 2 weeks later, I got my Alaska tour.
Uh-huh.
And I got, okay, well, that's a different story too, Alaska, okay.
Okay, and whereabouts in Alaska were you stationed?
Elmendorf Air Force Base, which wasn't too far from Anchorage.
Okay. And when were you sent up there? What time of year was it?
Let's see. I believe that was about August too.
Okay. That was August of 50, was it 51?
No, that would be pretty near by the time I was out.
Okay.
I went to Raino, and
Okay.
so I was there 2 years. Wait a minute, 52, 54. That was in 55.
Oh, 55.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and you basically did the same thing in Alaska, same type of work?
Yes, only it was a huge laboratory.
Uh-huh.
There were probably, I say huge, there were at least 5 or 6 people in the laboratory, technicians besides myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I asked, that's in the lab, but there were a lot of dentists also. I asked the colonel if I could go up for the base football team. He said, go ahead if you want to. And I did. And I made the team. And we played up in Fairbanks, Alaska. The season was pretty over when I went out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I watched the game, and they needed a center. They didn't have one, so I went. That's what I played. So I went out and I made it. And that was tough. It's not like high school football,
Mm-hmm.
but I enjoyed it very much.
What was the weather like up there? You were there for the winter, right?
It's cold.
Uh-huh.
It is dark. You can go to the movies and come out and you miss daylight, you know.
Uh-huh.
But it's otherwise, you're in the barracks all the time. The barracks, we were in the old barracks. It was just like a big long street with little streets going off it. And the little streets were your barracks where you slept.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the barracks, you went down to where you worked. And the only time you went out was to get something to eat. But the new barracks, while I was there, they were self-controlled. Everything was in a barracks. Your mess hall, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Bowling alleys, whatever. And I never saw one. I never went into one of them, rather.
Uh-huh.
But there was a hospital up there. We were very closely, of course, in the medical field, you're close to the hospital. And they would have big parties. And the food service would supply the orange juice. And the hospital would supply the alcoholic beverage.
Mm-hmm.
I went to one party one night, and they're mixing up the brew. But they hadn't started mixing it yet. They had just poured the alcohol in, and this friend of mine went over with a little paper cup, and he took a skip off the top, and he drank it down, and whack, passed out just like that. They had big parties. We used to have fun at the parties.
Uh-huh.
Remember a big lake trout laying out on the table with the food, and nobody had touched it. So I go over and I would go to the nurse, by the way. I broke the skin and I took some of the meat out and put it on, my plate. And I come back a half an hour later and there was nothing but bones there. Once the people saw, it's a nice meat, I guess they just cleaned it right up.
Uh-huh. Now, what did you do on your time off?
Well, I made staff sergeant while I was in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to go to the non-com club, non-commissioned officer club.
Yep.
I always wanted to play poker. They had a back room in there, So I went in one night and I played poker. I think you had to have $40 to get in the game. And in 14 minutes, I was out of my money. I was done with the game. But no, I did go fishing up there. We went down in the Kenai Peninsula in the Anchor River. And went with some of the old master sergeants because they could do whatever they wanted, more or less.
Yeah.
And amongst the five of us, I think I caught one salmon. And I gaffed a salmon for a guy, weighed about 50 pounds. That was fantastic. But in the wildlife up there, there was an army base. And going by the army base one time, I think we were going hunting. We went snowshoe rabbit hunting. And there's a huge moose. I mean, he was fantastic. You know, just standing there, browsing. And I got hooked up with the Chamber of Commerce, I think it was in Anchorage. We took a bunch of scouts up to a pond. I don't remember. I got a letter of commendation for it. And a bunch of Boy Scouts. Well, up in Alaska, if a moose or any animal is killed, you can turn it over to the Conservation Department, and they give it to the people that need the meat. Mm-hmm. Well, they gave us all the moose meat we could eat. So these boys, it was beautiful, like a Boy Scout camp. Mm-hmm. So we had to stay out overnight, one night. So the big canoes, I guess they call them cargo canoes. Well, anyway, we all went over this little island, or it wasn't an island. The pond had a kind of a tongue on it, like canal. And we set up camp that night, and we had to set up a big army tent, a great big tent. Mm-hmm. And so the boys, what was it? We're going to have a cookout. And we had all this moose meat, and we cut it up in chunks about so big. And on the beachfront, where all this sand, so I told them, you dig back a couple yards and dig a hole in the sand, not too close to any vegetation. And we'll put the charcoal in there. We'll build our fire in there. We built a fire in there, and I said, all right, we'll put a little sand on it, which we didn't do. I said, we'll put the potatoes in there. After it burns down a bit, we'll put the potatoes in. Put the potatoes in, and I said, okay. I said, now go down to the beach and take your little Boy Scout knife and cut a willow pole about as big as your finger and about so long, which they did. Now I said, we'll cut a hole in the meat, we'll slide that over the pole, and a piece of onion and a piece of meat and whatever, and we'll hold it over the fire. We'll cook that. So okay, so it's time to eat. Well, the potatoes were just about as black as black as their coat. And the meat, they're eating the meat, and these kids are, Anchorage is a city. I mean, they're not country kids. Mm-hmm. And they're eating, the blood's dripping right off their fingers. The meat's about half cooked. But we had a real good time. And of course, everything is all done, but the tent is still there. So I tried to get someone to go with me to take the tent back down, and I couldn't get anybody. So I took the tent down, and while I was doing it, the tag holders weren't that far away. I looked, and there's a huge moose. So I started over towards it. It's a female moose. Apparently didn't have any antlers. And I got pretty well, I'd say probably 10 yards from it. And I could see a young calf moose. So I just turned around and head back, because they said that's the most dangerous thing in the world, was that female moose with a young calf. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I folded up the tent and I put it in the canoe. And it's, it's in September, I think, it's cold. I paddle back across the lake, go to shore, take the tent out, and I get back in the canoe. I think there was a little dock. I had to go around that, or I had to go by that anyway. Went back out, and somebody on shore says, "Hey, Raino!" And I turned, and the canoe went right out from under me. And I'm sitting there in the water about up to my neck, froze to death. But those things you remember.
Okay. And so you were in Alaska for about 11 months?
Yes.
And then you got out? You were discharged?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously you decided not to make the Air Force a career?
That's true, which was a big mistake, actually, because I was a staff sergeant, and I was promised tech sergeant if I stayed over. And coming out to get onto the plane, I've been visiting this nurse, and his football friend of mine, he had his cleats on, as a matter of fact. Ben, you ain't going any place, you're gonna play football this year. I said, no, I said, I'm going home. He stepped on my foot with the cleats, you know, and that hurt like heck. But I got on a plane and I get to Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get discharged because I didn't have a urine sample. I didn't have a urine sample taken in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go temporary duty there until it was sent or taken or whatever, I forgot. But I met a friend of mine that I had been stationed with in Alaska, and I think I had his address. And I called him, and we went out one night in Seattle, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
A couple women with him. They were nice.
Okay. And then you came back to Whitehall?
Yes.
Okay. Once you were discharged, did you make use of the GI Bill at all?
No, I didn't. I made use of the $50 bond I got for every month I was in the service.
Okay. Did you get any kind of unemployment or anything?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And what did you do to make a living?
Sponged off my parents for a year, just about. You know, I lived at home.
Okay.
And I had a chance to be a state trooper or a prison guard.
Mm-hmm.
But I started my own laboratory.
Dental
Very
lab?
small. Yeah, it was I didn't have any money. I had that money, but by that time it was pretty near gone. And I started my laboratory, and I had the laboratory up until 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very successful. My work was good. I had good training. That was, you know, some people go into this work with no training, and they can get by, but it's not the same as having the training.
Uh-huh.
And no, that was good till, like I said, you know,
Okay.
I got MS and cancer and all that stuff. And
Okay.
I couldn't do it.
So, whereabouts did you have the business? Here in Whitehall?
Yes.
Okay. And did you get married?
Yes, I got married a couple years after I got out.
Okay. All right. And how do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life? Obviously, you wouldn't have gotten in the career field you chose without the service training.
Well, not only that, but you have a lot of experience. You meet different people and you go different places, and a lot of people grow up in a small town like this. Mr. Swinton, good example. If he hadn't gone in the Air or in the Navy, he would have never left Whitehall.
Mm-hmm.
I would have never left Whitehall.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's I don't know. What you did with Mr. Swinton, I would have liked to have done to my father,
Mm-hmm.
because he was in the First World War, and he was a sniper. He was wounded twice and gassed in Germany. And I think I've told Wayne occasionally that I wish I would have had his history, his biography.
Uh-huh.
That would have been interesting, very interesting.
Sure. Now, have you stayed in touch with any of the people you were in the service with?
Yes, I called Lieutenant Tim last year, and his wife, he was in Bend, Oregon. And his wife said he had died just previous to my call.
Oh.
But in Rutland, Vermont, there's Tony Zingali. He was on the football team. He was all Vermont State, apparently. And I call him every once in a while.
Uh-huh.
He's a nice guy.
Have you attended any sort of reunions?
Oh, I don't think we've had any, to my knowledge. Yes, we did. We had one in Reno, I think. No, I don't drive good, and I don't have the money to fly anyplace. So.
Okay. And anything else you'd like to talk about? Any incidents that we may have missed, or any funny experiences?
Well, yeah, there were a lot of funny experiences, but it's hard to think of some.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. No. Yeah, well, we had this in basic training. We had this. There's always one guy that's, he's the best. He's the ringleader, So we had a forced march, nighttime march, at Sid Air Force Base, and he had 3 or 4 of his buddies, and he didn't make it all the way through the march, but he was supposed to be this. I think he sprained his ankle or something. In Reno, Nevada, some of the guys would go to Raino and you could play, what the heck was it? You could box, you know. So a couple of these guys said, you know, Ben, why don't you come and, you know, box, you pick up some bucks. So I saw him a week later, and he was cut right from one end of his eyebrow to the middle of his forehead. I said, that's why I'm not going. But no, we had a lot of fun, really. I don't know. But I'll tell you, Mr. Swinton really has a good memory.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
All right, well, thank you so much for your interview.
Well, thank you.